Hello 5th grade, so today we're going to do our Painting Studio Watercolor Skill Builders, and the top of it says please do not paint directly on this page. We will create our skill builders on a separate piece of paper and then glue them into our sketchbook. So you are going to get 4 small white square pieces of paper, and you're going to need to write your name on all of them. All right, and then you're going to get a placemat. Your placemat might be a little bit bigger than mine. You're going to get a placemat to put your 4 watercolor skill builders on to. And then if we go back to our studio sketchbook to see what our skills are, the first one is an even watercolor wash. So that means you're going to take one color and you're going to flood the paper with that one color, and you want to make sure that it's even color so that it's not a lighter color here and a darker color here, that you make sure the color is even. So it takes a little practice, but you're going to get your paintbrush wet with plain water, and then you're going to cover the square with plain water, and then pick your color. So I'm going to pick a blue. So get a little bit of water on top of your watercolor. Wiggle your paintbrush gently around there to get some paint on your paintbrush. And like right now, you can see it's darker color here, lighter color here. So we want it to be the same. So the first thing after just plain water, I want to get paint on the square, and now I want to move that paint around. Maybe even add a little bit more water to lighten up colors, the areas that are too dark, and then maybe touch and add a little bit of paint color to the areas that are a little too light. So you want it to be fairly even across. It's not going to be perfect. We're human. We can't do anything perfect, but you want to make sure you don't distinctly have really dark areas and really light areas, that it's all the same. So that's the first skill builder. The second one is watercolor with salt. Now this can be a little tricky. Sometimes it doesn't work, but the first thing that you have to get is a little cup of salt, and you want your salt to be dry. If you get water in it, it's not going to work. You can use any color on this, but you're going to flood your paper with plain water again. And you want your paint to be very wet. So I'm going to choose this red-orange color. I think this is just red. I'm going to choose this red color, and I want the paint to be very wet. So you want to work fast. So you want to get a lot of water and a lot of paint on your square. And then while it's still wet, pinch salt and sprinkle it onto the top of your square. And then if you've done it fast enough and your paint is wet enough, you'll see the paint starts to get dark and run towards the salt, because the salt is sucking that paint and that water into the salt. And so the paint, you should have areas that look speckly, like darker spots of color and lighter color where the salt is not. I'm going to spin this around. Okay, so on the third box it says mix 2 primary colors to create a secondary. So the first thing is you need to know what the primary colors are, and I hope you do. Red, yellow, and blue are the primary colors. So you're going to choose 2 of those primary colors, and you're going to paint them on opposite sides of the square, and you're going to make them meet in the middle to make a secondary color. So the primary colors, red, yellow, and blue, you're going to choose 2 of those. So I'm going to choose yellow and blue, and yellow and blue mixed together make green. So I am going to paint 1/2 of my square yellow. I like to start with a lighter color. It's just a preference, but you may choose to start with a darker color. And then blue on the other side. And I'm going to try to get them to mix in the middle. And there, I didn't even have to try real hard. It mixed right here in the middle. So now I have yellow, green, and blue. It was that quick. So you want, with watercolor, if you're wanting to mix or you're wanting to use salt, you want to work fast. And then our last box is wet on wet analogous colors. Well, so far I've pretty much done wet on all three. I got these two wet with water and then used wet paint, so that's wet on wet. This one I didn't use water first, but I took two wet colors, mixed them together, wet on wet, and got the green. So analogous colors are colors that are next to each other on the color wheel. So colors like let me pull this down so you can see. Colors like red, orange, and orange. Or yellow, orange, red, orange, and orange. Or blue, green, yellow, green, and green. So the easiest is to just pick 3 greens, 3 blues, 3 reds, 3 oranges, 3 purples. Or you could look at the color wheel that's above the whiteboard and see what 3 colors are next to each other and go that way. So I'm going to do, I've got 2 cool, I'm going to do the oranges. So the first thing I'm going to do is get a little bit of water on top of each of the oranges. So plain water on my paintbrush, I pull my paintbrush across the edge of the oval. And I want to get those paints just a little bit wet, a little bit soft. So I'm going to take my paintbrush, wiggle it around to soften up that watercolor underneath. And I'm just going to paint random, but I'm imagining 3 colors next to each other. So let's see. I'll do red, orange next to, so that it's a gradual change. And then yellow, orange. And that's really jumping from red orange to yellow orange is a big jump. So I think I'm going to go back to orange and add just a little bit of orange between the two. So the paper is wet and the paint is wet. So wet on wet, that was in the description. So these are your 4 watercolor skill builders. When you are finished, you're going to take your placemat, leaving the papers on, your squares on the placemat, and you're going to put this on the drying rack. You'll pour out your bowl of water. You'll rinse your paintbrush out, put it bristle side up in the cup, and you'll put your paint tray back in the drawer. And then your salt, if you have a lot of salt left over like I do, I would like you to pour it back into the salt container back by the sink and put this cup back in the cabinet.